This series in Walking with Jesus Christ is about the use of money. And we've been talking about how the Bible teaches us that we should change our way of thinking about money. Jesus taught that we shouldn't think of money as ours, but as God's. God provides it for us, and our job is to focus on spiritual things and not material things. Let me rephrase that. God provides for us so that we can focus our lives on spiritual things and not have to be so concerned about money. The tricky part, though, is that money is enticing. Money is appealing. Money is intriguing. It's attractive. And that leads us to our next topic. Watch out for the love of money. I'm sure you've all heard the famous saying, money is the root of all evil. That actually is one of the most often misquoted verses from the Bible. Money is just paper, or coins, or today just a credit card or a phone. How can something that's not even alive be the root of evil? Here's what the verse actually says in 1 Timothy 6, verse 10. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. I think this is a real important distinction to make. Money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is one of the roots of all kinds of evils. And that's exactly what we've been talking about. It's not about the actual physical material thing. It's all about how we think about it. The verse right before verse 10 is really helpful as well. Let's take a look at 1 Timothy 6, verse 9. Those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. On a very basic level, money is just what we use to buy groceries. Money is what pays for the basic necessities of life. It's when we get all caught up in the desire to be rich that we start to run into problems. Look at this verse. The issue lies in the desire to be rich. You can actually be very rich and still be a faithful, loving follower of Jesus Christ. It's not about how much money you have. It's about how much you want. We've read quite a few verses from Jesus' teaching at the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 6. There's another thing that Jesus said in that sermon that I think really applies here. So let's look at Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. No one can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Another one of Jesus' famous sayings, right? You can't serve God and money. It really is that simple. You can either have as your goal in life to pursue spiritual things and dedicate your life to serving God, or you can set a goal of amassing as much wealth as possible and getting rich. You can either decide to serve God, or you can serve your own desire for more and more money. But you can't choose both. When you pursue riches, you find that they consume you, and they leave nothing else for you to give to God. There's a great lesson that Jesus teaches in Luke chapter 12, verses 15 to 21 about this exact same thing. And he said to them, take care and be on your guard against all covetousness. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. And he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced plentifully. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. You see, covetousness is greed. Covetousness is being overly desirous of riches. So this lesson is about being on guard against the love of riches. That's exactly what we've been talking about. And I love what Jesus says in verse 15. Great guidance for us in our lives today. He says, one's life does not consist in the abundance of their possessions. It's like we think that he who dies with the most wins. Are we crazy? I mean, you're still dead. Nobody gets to their last moment in life. No one's laying on their hospital bed and says, bring me my last 401k statement so I can hold it. Right? At the end of your days, it's all about the people that you've loved in your life. It's about the faith that you've developed with your God. Let's get back to the parable. The farmer has been blessed. Their crops have come in huge this year. And sometimes this happens in life. You get a windfall in your life and you find yourself sitting pretty. So just like all of us, the farmer starts thinking, what am I going to do with all this money? Look what he says in Luke 12, verses 18 to 19. He says, I'll do this. I'll tear down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. That's his solution? Really? Building bigger barns? Oh, I once read that the self-storage industry just keeps growing and growing and growing. We all have so much stuff, we don't have room for it in our own house. So we have to go rent a storage locker to keep it in. And the next day, the Amazon delivery truck brings us more and more. How much do you need? Investing more and more and focusing on growing your money greater and greater is the goal of many people, but why? So like the farmer, you can sit back and relax and say, I have plenty laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. Isn't that what society tries to teach us? Isn't that the message we keep getting? Work harder and harder, get more and more, and then you can just sit back and relax. But look at the next verses. Look at Luke 12, 20 and 21. God said to him, fool, this night your soul is required of you. And the things you prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God. The day after you retire, you have a heart attack and your life is over. What good is that? Take a close look at what Jesus says there in Luke 12, verse 21. This is how it goes for someone who lays up treasure for themselves and is not rich towards God. This is what life is like for someone who focuses their whole life on money and is not focused on serving God. Don't be that person. The real issue at play with the love of money is selfishness. The use of money is a choice between serving yourself or serving God. If you love money, it will bring you more grief. If you want less grief in your life, you need to focus on loving God and not money. Try to live your life aware of how much of your time and energy you're focusing on material things that just eventually pass away versus spiritual things that last forever. That really is the key, being aware of what's going on in your life. Being aware of all the advertising and marketing that fills your news feed, your TV screen, your radio airwaves, billboards, magazines, newspapers, and all has the same message. You need more. Buy more. Be aware of what's going on around you. Be aware of this barrage that comes in against you. And try to focus on something spiritual instead. Try to live your life content with what you have. I love what Paul tells the Philippians in Philippians chapter 4, verses 11 to 13. He says, not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. What a great example. If more of us could say that, we'd all be a lot happier. Keep reading, verse 12. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. Rich, poor, it didn't matter to Paul. His contentment wasn't based on his bank balance. What is it based on? Look at the next verse, verse 13. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Learn to get your strength through the love of Christ, not the fleeting joy of money. The joy of money really is fleeting. Version 7.1 really isn't that much different than version 7.0. Do you really need it? I was really happy once to buy my wife a new car for her birthday. And we drove it home. We parked it in the garage. I took one look at the shiny new car, and I hit the garage door button, and I heard screech. as the door put a big scratch right down the back of our brand new car. No worries. Someone dinged the door in the grocery store parking lot the very next day. Don't look for fulfillment in things. Things get old. Things get scratched. Things get beat up, and they don't bring you any joy. Look for your contentment in something more eternal. Paul wrote a similar message to Timothy in 1 Timothy 6, verses 6 through 8. He said, "Godliness with contentment is great gain." Let's repeat that verse. Godliness with contentment is great gain. In verse 7, he says, "We brought nothing into this world, and we cannot take anything out of this world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content." What a great attitude to have. We brought nothing into this world, and we can't take anything out of it. If we have food and clothing, learn to be content. I'm going to end with one final point. None of these material things that you pursue are really going to make you happy anyway. I know that because King Solomon says it. King Solomon was the richest man ever to live, and he didn't deny himself any pleasure. And look at the conclusion he comes to in Ecclesiastes 5, verses 10 and 11. He says, "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his own eyes?" It really is an endless loop. You want more, so you work hard and you get more, and you still want more. So now you have to work harder and you get more, and you still want more. What a rat race. Learn to be content with what you have. The love of money doesn't lead to anything good. Remember that we said that it's not about how much money you have, it's about how much you want. So be content with what you have, and the whole problem just goes away because you can't depend on money. We're walking with Jesus Christ, and the series is the use of money. Find the next session called Don't Depend on Money, and we'll continue that.